The ochre dust swirled under the relentless African sun, painting the horizon in hues of burnt orange and deep crimson. This was the land of the Zulu, a place where ancient spirits still whispered through the tall grasses and the echoes of ancestors resonated in the valleys. Here, nestled amongst the rolling hills of KwaZulu-Natal, lay the village of Kwamlanga, a community where life flowed with the rhythm of tradition and the pulse of the earth. But beneath the surface of this seemingly tranquil existence, a storm was brewing, a darkness stirred by the bitter heart of a man named Bekasu. Bekasu, once a respected elder of Kwamlanga, had become a shadow of his former self. His eyes, once filled with warmth and wisdom, now held a chilling coldness, a reflection of the resentment that had taken root deep within his soul. He had been betrayed, stripped of his authority, and cast aside by those he had once called brothers. The council, blinded by their own ambition, had turned against him, their words like poisoned spears piercing his very being. This betrayal had not only wounded him, it had ignited a fire of vengeance that threatened to consume him entirely. He remembered the days when his laughter filled the village square, when his counsel was sought by all. Now, those memories were like distant echoes, drowned out by the roaring tide of his anger. He felt as if the very ground he walked upon was soaked with the injustice he had suffered. He was determined to make them pay, to see those who had wronged him brought to their knees. He would not rest until he had reclaimed what was rightfully his, and more. He craved power, not for the good of his people, but for the sheer satisfaction of seeing his enemies suffer. Whispers carried on the wind spoke of a power that lay beyond the realm of the living, a power that could bend the will of others, a power that could deliver the vengeance he craved. Tales of a creature, a mischievous imp known as a Tokoloshe, a spirit of chaos and destruction, began to fill his thoughts. It was a dangerous path, one that the elders warned against, a path that could lead to ruin. But Bekasu was beyond reason, his heart hardened by anger and resentment. He was willing to risk everything, even his soul, to see his enemies destroyed. He would not be denied. Driven by his insatiable thirst for revenge, Bekasu sought out the village's oldest and most enigmatic Sangoma, a woman known as Makosi. Her hut, nestled deep within the heart of the forest, was a place of shadows and secrets, where the veil between the worlds was thin. Makosi, with her ancient eyes that seemed to hold the weight of generations, warned him of the Tokoloshe's malevolence, of the terrible price that would have to be paid. But Bekasu, deaf to her warnings, was consumed by his desire for retribution. He had made up his mind. There was no turning back. Makosi, sensing the darkness that had taken root in Bekasu's heart, reluctantly agreed to guide him, knowing that she could not change his path. She began the ritual, her voice weaving a spell that summoned the mischievous spirit. The air grew heavy, the shadows deepened, and a chilling wind swept through the hut, signaling the arrival of the Tokoloshe. A small, grotesque creature, its eyes burning with an eerie light, its presence filled the room with an unsettling dread. Bekasu, despite the fear that pricked at his skin, felt a surge of power. He had a weapon now, a force that could crush his enemies. He had unleashed a storm, and the village of Kwamlanga would never be the same. The village of Kwamlanga was a tapestry woven with the threads of Zulu tradition. Huts with thatched roofs clustered around the central kraal, where cattle grazed peacefully under the watchful eyes of the herdsmen. The air was thick with the scent of wood smoke and the aroma of cooking maize, a comforting fragrance that spoke of home and community. The rhythm of life was dictated by the seasons, by the planting and harvesting of crops, by the rituals and ceremonies that bound the people together. It was a place where the past was revered, and the present was lived in harmony with nature. This was the world that Bekasu had known, the world that he now sought to corrupt. Bekasu himself was a complex figure, a man of both strength and vulnerability. In his younger days, he had been a respected warrior, known for his bravery and his strategic mind. He had fought in many battles, defending his people against rival tribes, earning the admiration of all who knew him. He had risen through the ranks of the council, his wisdom and leadership qualities making him a trusted advisor to the chief. He had been a pillar of the community, a man of integrity and honor. But the betrayal he had suffered had twisted him, turning his strengths into weaknesses, his wisdom into bitterness, and his honor into a thirst for vengeance. His relationship with the other council members had once been one of camaraderie and mutual respect. They had been like brothers, sharing meals, stories, and the burdens of leadership. But their ambition had gotten the better of them. Their desire for power had corrupted their hearts. They had seen Bekissu as a threat, a rival for the chief's favor, and they had conspired to remove him from his position. They had used lies and deceit, twisting his words and actions, turning the community against him. They had broken the bonds of brotherhood, and they had ignited the fire of vengeance in Bekisue's heart. Makosi, the Sangoma, was a woman of immense power and knowledge. She was a keeper of ancient secrets, a link to the world of the ancestors. Her eyes, though old, held a spark of otherworldly wisdom, and her voice, though raspy, resonated with the authority of generations past. She lived a solitary life on the edge of the forest, her hut a place of both reverence and fear. She had seen the darkness that lurked within the hearts of men, and she had witnessed the consequences of tampering with forces beyond human comprehension. She was a protector of her people, a guardian against the unseen threats that lurked in the shadows. The Tokoloshe, the mischievous spirit that Bekissu had summoned, was a creature of pure malevolence. It was small and grotesque, with sharp teeth, glowing red eyes, and a body that seemed to shift and flicker in the shadows. It was a creature of chaos, delighting in the suffering of others, reveling in the destruction it caused. It was a force of nature, untamed and unpredictable, and it was now bound to Bekisue's will. It was a dangerous alliance, one that would have far-reaching consequences for the village of Kwamlanga. Bekisue's initial motivation was fueled by his desire for revenge, his need to see those who had wronged him suffer. He was consumed by anger and resentment, blinded by his thirst for retribution. He had lost everything he had held dear, and he was determined to make those who had taken it from him pay the price. He had unleashed a force that he did not fully understand, a force that would soon turn against him. He had embarked on a dangerous path, and he was about to learn the true cost of his actions. The stage was set for a tragedy, a story of ambition, betrayal, and the consequences of tampering with the dark arts. Bekisue's initial satisfaction at his enemy's misfortunes soon soured as the Tokoloshe's chaos spread indiscriminately, turning Kwamlanga into a place of fear. He discovered the spirit wasn't his puppet, but a force of pure malevolence, reveling in the suffering of all, not just his rivals. A hidden prophecy, whispered by Makosi, revealed the Tokoloshe's true nature. It craved not just destruction, but the soul of its summoner, a chilling secret that shattered Bekisue's thirst for revenge and replaced it with a desperate fight for survival, a fight against the very darkness he unleashed. Bekisue's initial goal was clear: to dismantle the council that had betrayed him and reclaim his position of power. He believed that the Tokoloshe was the perfect tool to achieve this, a weapon that could strike fear into the hearts of his enemies and bring them to their knees. He envisioned a swift and decisive victory, a return to the days when he was respected and revered. But he soon discovered that his control over the Tokoloshe was an illusion, that the spirit had its own agenda, and that his quest for revenge was spiraling into something far more dangerous. His first obstacle was the realization that he was no longer the master, but a puppet in a game he didn't fully understand. The subplots began to weave themselves into the main narrative, adding layers of complexity to the unfolding drama. One subplot involved Nandi, Bekisue's estranged wife, a woman who had once loved him deeply, but had been driven away by his bitterness and anger. She had left Kwamlanga, seeking refuge in a neighboring village, but she still carried a torch for her husband, a hope that he might one day find his way back to the man she had once known. Her journey became a parallel narrative, a tale of love, loss, and the possibility of redemption. She was caught between her loyalty to her community and her love for her husband. Another subplot focused on the council members, the very men Bekissu sought to destroy. They were not the monolithic villains he had imagined, but flawed individuals, each with their own motivations and insecurities. Some were driven by ambition, others by fear, and some by a genuine belief that they were acting in the best interests of the community. Their internal conflicts, their doubts and regrets, added a layer of moral ambiguity to the story, blurring the lines between good and evil. They had made mistakes, but they were not beyond redemption. They were not all bad, and some were even starting to regret their actions. Makosi, the Sangoma, became more than just a guide for Bekissu. She became a reluctant ally, a voice of reason in the midst of chaos. She knew the dangers of the path he had chosen, and she tried to steer him away from the darkness. But she also understood the depths of his pain, and she was determined to help him find a way to break free from the Tokoloshe's grasp. She was a protector, a guardian of her people, and she was not about to give up on them. She was prepared to do whatever it took to restore balance to the community. The relationships between the characters became increasingly complex. Bekissue's relationship with Nandi was strained by his anger and her fear, but their love for each other still lingered beneath the surface. His relationship with the council members was defined by hatred and betrayal, but also by a shared history and a sense of community. His relationship with Makosi was one of mutual respect and understanding, but also of fear and distrust. The dynamics between these characters created a web of tension and conflict, driving the plot forward and adding depth to the story. The first major obstacle for Bekissu was the realization that the Tokoloshe was not a tool, but a force of its own, a malevolent entity that could not be controlled. He had sought to use it for his own purposes, but he had inadvertently unleashed a power that threatened to consume him and his community. He had to find a way to break the bond, to banish the spirit, and to save himself and his people from the darkness he had unleashed. He was now facing a far greater challenge than he had ever imagined, and he was starting to understand the true cost of his actions. The initial chaos caused by the Tokoloshe was unsettling, but it was still somewhat contained, mostly targeting Bekissue's enemies. The village, though fearful, still clung to a semblance of normalcy. However, this fragile peace was shattered by a single devastating event, the sudden and inexplicable death of Chief Swilak, the respected leader of Kwamlanga. He wasn't a target of Bekissue's revenge. A man who had always been fair and just, his passing sent shockwaves through the community. His death was not only a tragedy, but a clear sign that the Tokoloshe's power was spiraling out of control, no longer confined to Bekissue's intended targets. This event served as the true inciting incident, the catalyst that propelled the story into a new, more dangerous phase. Chief Swilak's death was not a natural one. His body was found contorted, his face frozen in a mask of terror, with no apparent cause of death. The village elders, including those who had once betrayed Bekissu, knew that this was not the work of a natural illness or accident. They suspected the dark magic, the whispers of the Tokoloshe, and a chilling realization began to dawn upon them. They were all in danger, not just those who had wronged Bekissu. The death of the chief shattered the illusion of safety and forced them to confront the reality of the evil that had been unleashed. The status quo had been irrevocably altered, and the village was now teetering on the brink of chaos. This event had a profound impact on all the characters. For Bekissu, it was a wake-up call, a stark reminder of the monster he had unleashed. He realized that he was no longer in control, that the Tokoloshe was a force of pure malevolence, and that he was responsible for the death of a man he had respected. His initial thirst for revenge was replaced by a growing sense of guilt and despair, and he began to question his actions. He was now driven by a new goal, to stop the Tokoloshe and save his community from the darkness he had unleashed. For Nandi, the news of Chief Swilak's death was a devastating blow, a stark reminder of the danger that her village was facing. She knew that she had to return, that she could no longer stand by and watch her community be destroyed. She felt a sense of responsibility, a need to help those she had left behind, and she knew that she might be the only one who could reach Bekissu and bring him back from the brink. Her motivation shifted from a desire for personal happiness to a desire to protect her people. The council members, now facing a common enemy, were forced to put aside their differences and work together. They realized that they had made a terrible mistake in betraying Bekassu, and they were now facing the consequences of their actions. They were driven by fear and guilt, but also by a sense of duty to protect their community. Their motivation shifted from a desire for power to a desire for survival. Makosi, seeing the escalating chaos, knew that the time for action had come. She had warned Bekassu. She had tried to guide him, but he had ignored her advice. Now, she had to take matters into her own hands, to use her knowledge and her power to try and stop the Tokoloshe. She was driven by a sense of responsibility, a need to protect her people, and a desire to restore balance to the world. The death of Chief Swilak had unleashed a storm, and she knew that she had to do everything in her power to weather it. The death of Chief Swilak sent Kwamlanga into a spiral of fear and uncertainty. The once vibrant village was now shrouded in a palpable sense of dread, the laughter and songs replaced by hushed whispers and anxious glances. The crops began to wither, the livestock fell ill, and the once plentiful water sources started to dry up. The Tokoloshe's influence was spreading like a disease, infecting every aspect of their lives. The villagers, desperate and afraid, turned to Bekassu, not with anger, but with a desperate plea for help. They saw a flicker of hope in him, a chance that he could somehow undo the damage he had caused. Bekassu, burdened by guilt and remorse, accepted their plea. He knew that he had to atone for his sins, that he had to find a way to stop the Tokoloshe and save his community. His motivation had shifted from revenge to redemption, from hatred to compassion. He was no longer driven by a desire for power, but by a desire to protect those he had once sought to destroy. He embarked on a journey of self-discovery, seeking guidance from Makosi and the ancestors, trying to find a way to break the bond with the malevolent spirit. As Bekassu delved deeper into the ancient lore, he discovered that the Tokoloshe was not just a mischievous imp, but a powerful entity that had been bound to the earth for centuries. He learned that the only way to truly defeat it was not through brute force, but through a complex ritual that required a sacrifice that would test his resolve to the limit. This new challenge added another layer of complexity to the story, forcing Bekassu to confront his own mortality and the true cost of his actions. He was about to face his greatest fear. Meanwhile, Nandi, driven by her love for Bekassu and her sense of duty to her community, returned to Kwamlanga. She found a village ravaged by fear and despair, a shadow of its former self. She saw the pain and suffering on the faces of her people, and she knew that she had to do everything in her power to help them. She became a beacon of hope, a source of strength for those who had lost faith. She was a force to be reckoned with. She sought out Bekassu, confronting him with his mistakes, but also offering him her support. She saw the change in him, the remorse in his eyes, and she knew that he was capable of redemption. Their reunion was bittersweet, filled with both pain and longing. They had a long road ahead of them, a journey of healing and forgiveness, but they were determined to face it together. Their love was tested, but it was not broken. The council members, now united by a common enemy, began to work together to try and find a solution to the crisis. They set aside their differences, their ambition, and their pride, and they focused on the survival of their community. They realized that they had made a terrible mistake in betraying Bekassu, and they were now determined to make amends. They had a duty to protect their people, and they were not about to fail them. They were determined to find a way to restore balance to their community. A new character was introduced, Thabo, a young and ambitious warrior from a neighboring village. He had heard the whispers of the chaos in Kwamlanga, and he saw an opportunity to prove his worth. He arrived at the village, offering his services to the council, promising to help them defeat the Tokoloshe. His motivations were complex, a mixture of bravery, ambition, and a desire for recognition. He was a wild card, an unpredictable element that could either help or hinder their efforts. He was determined to make a name for himself. The setting expanded beyond the village of Kwamlanga, introducing the surrounding forests and mountains, places where the ancient spirits still roamed. These places became significant locations for rituals, for seeking guidance from the ancestors, and for confronting the darkness. The landscape itself became a character in the story, reflecting the inner turmoil of the characters and the chaos that had engulfed their world. The Earth was now part of the story, and it would play a significant role in the events to come. The subplots deepened, exploring the complex relationships between the characters, their internal conflicts, and their individual journeys. Nandi's struggle to forgive Bekissu, the council members' attempts to atone for their sins, and Thebo's quest for recognition all added layers of complexity to the main narrative. The story was becoming more than just a tale of revenge. It was becoming a story about love, loss, redemption, and the enduring power of the human spirit. The stakes were high, and the consequences were dire. The first major twist came when Bekissu discovered that the sacrifice required to defeat the Tokoloshe was not just any sacrifice, but a sacrifice of the heart, a sacrifice of his own life. This revelation shattered his hope for redemption, forcing him to confront the ultimate price of his actions. He was about to face his greatest fear, and he was not sure if he was ready to pay the price. The stage was set for a tragic climax, a battle between darkness and light, a battle for the soul of Kwamlanga. The revelation that Bekissu had to sacrifice his own life to defeat the Tokoloshe sent shockwaves through the village. The hope that had begun to flicker was now threatened with extinction. The villagers who had begun to trust him again were now faced with the possibility of losing him, the very man who had brought them to the brink of destruction, but who was now their only hope for salvation. The stakes had been raised, and the tension was palpable. The weight of the world was on Bekissu's shoulders. Bekissu, faced with this impossible choice, struggled with his own mortality. He had sought revenge, he had unleashed chaos, and now he was being asked to pay the ultimate price. He questioned his worthiness, his ability to make such a sacrifice. He was torn between his desire for redemption and his fear of death. He wrestled with his conscience, his heart heavy with the knowledge that he had brought this upon himself. He was facing his greatest challenge, and he was not sure if he was strong enough to overcome it. Nandi, witnessing Bekissu's internal struggle, refused to accept his fate. She had lost him once, and she was not about to lose him again. She believed that there had to be another way, a way to defeat the Tokoloshe without sacrificing his life. She embarked on her own quest, seeking guidance from the ancestors, delving deeper into the ancient lore, determined to find a solution. Her love for Bekissu fueled her determination, and she was not about to give up on him. She was a force to be reckoned with. The council members, feeling a sense of responsibility for the crisis, joined Nandi in her quest. They had betrayed Bekissu, they had driven him to the brink of destruction, and now they were determined to make amends. They pooled their resources, their knowledge, and their skills, working together to find a way to defeat the Tokoloshe without sacrificing Bekissu. They were driven by guilt, but also by a genuine desire to protect their community. They were ready to do whatever it took to restore balance to their world. Thebo, the ambitious warrior, saw an opportunity to prove his worth. He believed that he could defeat the Tokoloshe himself, that he could become a hero and earn the recognition he craved. He challenged Bekissu, seeking to take his place as the savior of Kwamlanga. His actions added another layer of tension to the story, creating a conflict between his ambition and the need for unity. He was a wild card, and his actions were unpredictable. The subplots deepened, intertwining with the main narrative, creating a complex web of relationships and conflicts. Nandi's quest for an alternative solution led her to a hidden cave where she discovered an ancient artifact, a powerful amulet that had the potential to weaken the Tokoloshe. This discovery gave her hope, but it also put her in danger as the Tokoloshe sensed her presence and sought to destroy her. Her subplot was now intertwined with the main conflict, and her actions had a direct impact on the outcome of the story. The council members, in their quest for redemption, uncovered a secret about the Tokoloshe's origins, a dark history that revealed the true nature of the spirit and the reasons for its malevolence. This discovery gave them a deeper understanding of the enemy they were facing, and it also revealed a potential weakness that they could exploit. Their subplot was now intertwined with the main conflict, and their actions were crucial to the success of their mission. Thebo's ambition led him to make a pact with a dark force, a pact that would give him the power he craved, but at a terrible cost. His subplot took a dark turn, transforming him from a potential ally into a dangerous antagonist. His actions added another layer of complexity to the story, creating a new challenge for Bekissu and the others. He had become a threat to the community, and he had to be stopped. The tension between Bekissu and the Tokoloshe escalated. As the spirit grew stronger, its influence spreading throughout the village. The villagers were now living in constant fear, their lives disrupted by the Tokoloshe's malevolence. The stakes were higher than ever, and the fate of Kwamlanga hung in the balance. The battle between darkness and light was about to reach its climax. The lines between good and evil blurred, as the characters faced their own internal demons and the external threats that surrounded them. Bekissu's struggle with his own mortality, Nandi's determination to save him, the council members' quest for redemption, and Thebo's descent into darkness all contributed to the rising tension, creating a complex and compelling narrative. The story was reaching its peak, and the consequences of their actions were about to be revealed. The discovery of the ancient amulet by Nandi marked a major turning point in the story. It was a tangible source of hope, a sign that there might be a way to defeat the Tokoloshe without sacrificing Bekissu's life. However, the amulet was not without its challenges. It required a specific ritual to activate its power, a ritual that was both dangerous and complex. Nandi, with the help of the council members, began to prepare for the ritual, knowing that it was their last chance to save their community. The stakes were higher than ever, and the tension was palpable. Bekissu, witnessing Nandi's determination and the council members' commitment to redemption, began to find a renewed sense of hope. He realized that he was not alone in this fight, that he had people who cared for him, who believed in him, and who were willing to risk their lives for him. He began to embrace his fate, accepting the possibility of his own sacrifice, but also holding on to the hope that Nandi might find a way to save him. He was ready to face his destiny, whatever it might be. Thebo, consumed by his ambition and his pact with the dark force, became a formidable threat. He attacked the village, seeking to seize the amulet and claim the power of the Tokoloshe for himself. He was no longer just a rival. He had become a dangerous enemy, a force of destruction that threatened to overwhelm the community. The conflict between Thebo and the others escalated, creating a new level of tension and danger. The battle for Kwamlanga was now a three-way struggle between Bekissu, the Tokoloshe, and Thebo. The ritual to activate the amulet was a pivotal moment in the story. It was a complex and dangerous process, requiring the convergence of ancient magic, the power of the ancestors, and the courage of the participants. Nandi, with the help of Makosi, performed the ritual, her voice resonating with the power of the ages. The earth trembled, the sky darkened, and the forces of nature converged, creating a vortex of energy that threatened to consume everything in its path. The fate of Kwamlanga hung in the balance. The Tokoloshe, sensing the activation of the amulet, unleashed its full fury upon the village. The skies opened up, unleashing a torrent of rain and wind. The earth shook beneath their feet, and the very air seemed to crackle with malevolence. The villagers scattered, seeking shelter, their hearts filled with fear and despair. The battle for Kwamlanga had reached its climax, and the outcome was uncertain. The darkness had descended, and the light was about to be tested. Bekissu, despite his fear, stood firm, his heart filled with a newfound courage. He had accepted his fate, but he was not about to give up without a fight. He faced the Tokoloshe, his eyes burning with determination, his spirit fueled by his desire for redemption. He was no longer the man who had sought revenge. He had become a man who was willing to sacrifice everything for his community. Nandi, wielding the power of the amulet, confronted the Tokoloshe, her voice ringing out with authority. She unleashed the amulet's power, creating a wave of energy that pushed back the darkness, weakening the spirit and giving Bekissu a chance to strike. She had become a force to be reckoned with, a warrior in her own right, a protector of her people. She had found her strength, and she was not about to back down. The council members, witnessing Nandi's courage and Bekasue's determination, joined the fight, putting aside their differences and working together to protect their community. They had come a long way from the men who had betrayed Bekasue. They had learned from their mistakes, and they were now willing to risk their lives for the greater good. They had found their redemption, and they were ready to fight for their future. Thabo, driven by his ambition and his pact with the Dark Force, attacked Bekasue, seeking to seize the amulet and claim the power of the Tokoloshe for himself. Their battle was a clash of wills, a struggle between light and darkness, a fight for the soul of Kwamlanga. Thabo's descent into darkness had reached its peak, and he was about to face the consequences of his actions. He had become a threat, and he had to be stopped. The stage was set for the final confrontation, a battle between Bekasue, Nandi, the council members, and the forces of darkness. The fate of Kwamlanga hung in the balance, and the outcome was uncertain. The characters had reached their breaking points, their motivations were clear, and the stage was set for the climax of the story. The battle was about to begin, and the world was about to witness the power of the human spirit. The activation of the amulet had weakened the Tokoloshe, but it had also unleashed its full fury upon Kwamlanga. The village was now a battlefield, the air thick with the stench of smoke and the sounds of chaos. The villagers, though terrified, had found a new sense of resolve, their fear replaced by a determination to fight for their homes and their lives. They were ready to stand alongside Bekasue, Nandi, and the council members, united against the forces of darkness. The stage was set for the final confrontation. Bekasue, knowing that the final battle was upon them, took a moment to reflect on his journey. He had started as a man consumed by revenge, a man who had unleashed a monster upon his community. But he had also found redemption. He had learned from his mistakes, and he had become a man who was willing to sacrifice everything for his people. He was ready to face his destiny, whatever it might be. He was at peace with himself, and he was ready to fight. Nandi, wielding the power of the amulet, had become a beacon of hope for the villagers. She had proven her strength, her courage, and her unwavering love for Bekasue and her community. She was no longer just a wife or a daughter. She had become a warrior, a protector, and a leader. She was ready to face the Tokoloshe, and she was determined to win. She had found her purpose, and she was ready to fulfill it. The council members, having atoned for their betrayal, stood alongside Bekasue and Nandi, ready to fight for their community. They had put aside their differences, their ambition, and their pride, and they were now united by a common goal to defeat the Tokoloshe and restore peace to Kwamlanga. They had found their redemption, and they were ready to fight for their future. They were a team, and they were ready to face the darkness together. Thabo, consumed by his ambition and his pact with the Dark Force, became a major obstacle. He attacked Bekasue, seeking to seize the amulet and claim the power of the Tokoloshe for himself. Their battle was a brutal clash of wills, a fight between light and darkness, a struggle for the soul of Kwamlanga. Thabo had become a formidable enemy, and he had to be stopped. He had become the very thing he had sought to destroy. During their battle, Thabo revealed a secret about the Tokoloshe's origins, a dark history that explained its malevolence and its desire for destruction. He told them that the Tokoloshe was not just a spirit, but a manifestation of the darkest aspects of the human soul, a creature born of hatred, anger, and despair. This revelation added another layer of complexity to the story, giving them a deeper understanding of the enemy they were facing. The battle was not just against a spirit. It was a battle against the darkness within themselves. As Bekasue and Thabo fought, Nandi and the council members focused on weakening the Tokoloshe, using the power of the amulet to push back the darkness. They had to create an opening for Bekasue, a chance for him to strike the final blow. They were working together, their strengths complementing each other, their determination unwavering. A minor plot resolution occurred when one of the council members, overcome by guilt, sacrificed himself to protect Nandi from a surprise attack by Thabo. His death served as a reminder of the cost of their past mistakes, and it also solidified their commitment to redemption. His sacrifice was not in vain. It had bought them time, and it had given them hope. He had found his peace, and he had helped them to move forward. The battle between Bekissu and Thabo reached its climax, a brutal and intense struggle that tested both their physical and mental strength. Thabo, consumed by his ambition, unleashed his full fury, but Bekissu, fueled by his desire for redemption, stood firm, refusing to yield. He had found his inner strength, and he was ready to face his destiny. He was no longer the man he once was. He had become a warrior, a protector, and a hero. The stage was set for the final confrontation, a battle between Bekissu and the Tokoloshe, a battle that would determine the fate of Kwamlanga. The characters had reached their breaking points, their motivations were clear, and the stage was set for the climax of the story. The battle was about to begin, and the world was about to witness the power of the human spirit. Bekissu, having defeated Thabo, stood battered and bruised, but his spirit remained unbroken. He knew that the final battle was upon him, that he had to face the Tokoloshe and break the bond that had plagued his community. He was ready to make the ultimate sacrifice, if necessary, to save his people from the darkness he had unleashed. He had come a long way from the man who had sought revenge. He had found redemption, and he was ready to face his destiny. He was a warrior, a leader, and a hero. Nandi, wielding the power of the amulet, continued to weaken the Tokoloshe, creating an opening for Bekissu to strike the final blow. She was a force to be reckoned with, her courage and her love for Bekissu fueling her determination. She had found her strength, and she was ready to face the darkness alongside him. She was his partner, his protector, and his hope. She was a warrior, a leader, and a hero. The remaining council members, having witnessed the sacrifice of their comrade, were more determined than ever to defeat the Tokoloshe. They had put aside their differences, their ambition, and their pride, and they were now united by a common goal: to protect their community and honor the memory of their fallen brother. They had found their redemption, and they were ready to fight for their future. They were a team, and they were ready to face the darkness together. The Tokoloshe, weakened but still powerful, unleashed its full fury upon the village, creating a storm of chaos and destruction. The sky darkened, the earth trembled, and the very air seemed to crackle with malevolence. The villagers, though terrified, stood firm, their fear replaced by a determination to fight for their homes and their lives. They were ready to face the darkness, and they were ready to fight for their future. They had found their courage, and they were ready to face their destiny. Bekissu, seeing the destruction and the suffering of his people, felt a surge of anger, but he channeled it into a focused determination. He knew that he had to remain calm, that he had to control his emotions if he was to defeat the Tokoloshe. He had learned from his mistakes, he had grown as a person, and he was now ready to face his greatest challenge. He was ready to make the ultimate sacrifice, if necessary, to save his community. The emotional stakes were higher than ever, as the characters faced the possibility of their own deaths and the destruction of their community. Bekissu and Nandi shared a final, heartfelt moment, expressing their love for each other and their acceptance of their fate. Their love was a beacon of hope in the midst of darkness, a testament to the enduring power of the human spirit. They were ready to face their destiny together. The narrative threads began to converge, as all the characters were now aligned in their goal to defeat the Tokoloshe. Bekissu, Nandi, the council members, and the villagers were all working together, their strengths complementing each other, their determination unwavering. They had overcome their differences, their fears, and their doubts, and they were now ready to face the darkness together. They were a community, and they were ready to fight for their future. Makosi, the Sangoma, appeared, offering her guidance and her power to aid in the final battle. She had been a silent observer, a keeper of ancient knowledge, and now she was ready to play her part in the final resolution. She was a protector, a guide, and a source of strength for her people. She was ready to help them face the darkness, and she was ready to help them find their way back to the light. The final obstacle for Bekissu was not the Tokoloshe itself, but his own internal demons. He had to confront his past mistakes, his guilt, and his fear of death. He had to find the courage to make the ultimate sacrifice, if necessary, to save his community. He had to find his inner peace, and he had to find his way back to the light. He was ready to face his destiny, and he was ready to accept the consequences of his actions. The final confrontation between Bekissu and the Tokoloshe was a battle for the very soul of Kwamlanga. Nandi, wielding the amulet, unleashed a final surge of power, weakening the Tokoloshe and creating an opening for Bekissu to strike. He charged forward, his eyes burning with determination, his heart filled with a mixture of fear and courage. He was no longer the man who had sought revenge. He had become a warrior, a protector, and a hero. He was ready to face his destiny, whatever it might be. The fate of his community rested on his shoulders. The battle raged, a clash of wills between light and darkness, a struggle for the future of Kwamlanga. Bekissu, fueled by his desire for redemption and his love for his people, fought with a ferocity he never knew he possessed. He channeled his anger, his fear, and his pain into a single, focused attack, striking the Tokoloshe with all his might. The spirit shrieked, its form flickering and dissolving, its malevolence finally extinguished. The bond was broken, the darkness was vanquished, and the village was finally free. He had done it. He had defeated the monster, and he had saved his community. With the Tokoloshe gone, the storm subsided, the sky cleared, and a sense of peace descended upon Kwamlanga. The villagers, exhausted but triumphant, emerged from their homes, their faces filled with relief and gratitude. They had witnessed Bekissu's courage, they had seen him overcome the darkness, and they had found hope again. They had been wrong to doubt him, they had been wrong to hate him, and now they were ready to forgive him. They had a new respect for him, a respect born of his courage and his resilience. They were ready to welcome him back as their leader. The subplots began to resolve themselves. Nandi, having proven her strength and her courage, was embraced by the community as a leader in her own right. She had found her purpose, and she was ready to serve her people alongside Bekissu. Their love for each other had been tested, but it had emerged stronger than ever. They were a team, and they were ready to face the future together. Their love story had reached its climax, and they were ready to begin a new chapter. The remaining council members, having atoned for their past mistakes, were welcomed back into the community with open arms. They had learned from their errors, they had grown as individuals, and they were now ready to serve their people with humility and compassion. They had found their redemption, and they were ready to rebuild their community. They had become better men, and they were ready to make amends. Their journey had reached its end, and they were ready to move forward. The thematic closures were evident in the aftermath of the battle. The story had explored the dangers of unchecked anger, the importance of forgiveness, and the power of inner strength. It had shown that even in the darkest of times, hope can still prevail, and that redemption is always possible. It had emphasized the importance of community, of unity, and of love. It had taught them valuable lessons, and it had left them with a sense of hope and inspiration. Now, it is up to you, the reader, to carry these lessons forward. Remember the story of Bekissu and the Tokoloshe, and let it inspire you to choose love over hate, forgiveness over resentment, and light over darkness. Be the change you wish to see in the world. Years passed, and Kwamlanga flourished under the wise and compassionate leadership of Bekissu and Nandi. The scars of the Tokoloshe's reign slowly faded, replaced by a renewed sense of unity and purpose. The village had learned valuable lessons from the tragedy, lessons about the dangers of unchecked anger, the importance of forgiveness, and the power of inner strength. They had emerged from the darkness stronger and more resilient than ever before. They had found their way back to the light, and they were determined to never forget the lessons they had learned. Bekissu, humbled by his experience, dedicated his life to serving his community, guiding them with wisdom and compassion. He had become a true leader, a man who had earned the respect and love of his people. He had learned from his mistakes, he had grown as a person, and he had become a source of inspiration for his community. He never forgot the lessons he had learned, the dangers of the dark arts, and the importance of choosing the path of light. He had found his purpose, and he was determined to fulfill it. Nandi, having proven her strength and her courage, became a respected leader in her own right. She worked alongside Bekissu, her wisdom and compassion complementing his strength and his resolve. She had found her voice, she had embraced her power, and she had become a role model for the women of Kwamlanga. She had found her purpose, and she was determined to make a difference. She was a warrior, a leader, and a hero. The remaining council members, having atoned for their past mistakes, served their community with humility and dedication. They had learned from their errors, they had grown as individuals, and they were now determined to make amends for the pain they had caused. They had found their redemption, and they were determined to serve their people with honor and integrity. They had become better men, and they were determined to make a positive impact on their community. Makosi, the Sangoma, continued to guide and protect her people, her wisdom and her knowledge serving as a beacon of hope in times of trouble. She had witnessed the darkness, she had seen the light, and she had dedicated her life to preserving the balance between the two. She was a guardian, a protector, and a source of wisdom for her community. She was a reminder that the past must be respected, but that the future must be embraced with hope and courage. The story of Bekissu and the Tokoloshe became a legend, passed down through generations, a tale of darkness and redemption, a testament to the resilience of the human spirit. It was a reminder that even in the darkest of times, hope can still prevail, and that even the most flawed individuals can find their way back to the light. It was a story that would be told around the fire for generations to come, a tale of love, loss, redemption, and the enduring power of the human spirit. And now, as this story comes to a close, it's your turn to carry its lessons forward. Share this tale with others. Let it inspire you to choose compassion over anger, and to always seek the light within yourself and the world around you. Remember, the power to create change lies within each and every one of us.